And here I'm very happy that we have a scientist on the panel with whom I would like to start the discussion. So, Jonas, is that a right pronunciation? If we talk a lot of times on the policy-making level that maybe we lack the political will, I often wonder to what extent we do have the technology to address actually in a systematic and in a consistent way air pollution. So I was really interested to hear about what does your research shows in terms of how do we measure air pollution, and particularly something that that you have mentioned in your bio, and that's the emission libraries. So if you can explain us a bit more about that, and to tell us more what's happening in the research arena. Are we on the right track in how we measure, or are there manipulations in how we measure air pollution? What is your opinion on that?
Yes, hi all. And thank you, Galena, for inviting me in this summit and panel. We have three main detection techniques to measure aerosol particles. Those are namely mobility classification, optical sizing, and aerodynamic particle sizing via inertial impaction. And we don't have that kind of risk monitors that would tell us what kind of threat exposure is causing. So the exposure risk relation is still not very well known, and there are no direct instruments to say that is this now really dangerous, or is it just like a natural, for example, sea salt or so. So we don't have that kind of online monitors to measure particle size and chemically resolved concentrations, except some aerosol mass spectrometers or so, which is then a huge machine, and also expensive, and the data analysis requires lots of knowledge. And we have measurement standards. Aerosol measurement standards are defining very well how to measure air pollution levels, and then there is like a harmonized way to report it and so on. So that is done well, but there is still lots of space for development. Now the new, for example, hot topic is like low-cost sensors and how we can use those to support our core ambient air quality measurement stations. And the low-cost sensors, small, they are of course more effective by the environmental conditions, like for example relative humidity or temperature or so. And this is why we cannot replace the core instrumentation using cheap detectors, but they can be very valuable to support our understanding of the local pollution levels. Here in Macedonia, European Environmental Agency report, it said that you have like 2 measurement points. It's not so big country, but I think there could be a bit more. Global measurement network is under development. It's far from perfect. For example, from University of Helsinki, Professor Markku Kulmala is currently trying to build up better measurement network also for research purposes in Asia and so on. We have many things, but we don't understand how our emissions and life is impacting on our environment. And atmosphere is one of the most critical components, which is combining like the surface conditions, sea, and then the atmosphere. And if we don't understand the dynamics of our pollution in like global scale, then it is a bit like flying with an airplane that you don't know how it actually works. And this is quite risky now because we are flying fast and we don't know what are the consequences. And yeah, we are playing with fire. I'm myself an indoor aerosol physicist. I'm specialized on indoor air pollution exposure. And my background is in occupational hygiene and so on. And we spend most of the time indoors. This is well justified to focus on that. But indoor air quality, it depends heavily on outdoor air quality, what we have outdoors. It is estimated that in Europe, I think it was more than 50, more than 60% of the indoor air pollution is coming from outdoors. Then we have indoor sources in our residences, public places, occupational environments. And these indoor different sources, we don't actually know what is their impact on our exposure. And this is when I was starting that, okay, we have to understand where the air pollution is coming. So source characterization. We measure concentrations, we like concentration, like the biological exposure responses. But what I would like to do is to understand the whole chain of air pollution. So starting from the source characterization, then estimating the air pollution mass flows and to the exposure, human exposure, and then how much we take in our respiratory system these different pollutants. And then using not sources impacting on our exposure level, and we know more or less what they are emitting, so we can actually estimate how much each source is contributing to our exposure level. So now we are starting to talk about source-specific risk assessment. And when we have source-specific risk assessment, then we can estimate which of the sources are causing highest relative risk. And then when we know the highest relative risk, then we can of course go directly to that one, or maybe the easiest one, and then try to reduce those emissions and reduce the risk in the most efficient way. So this is kind of the basic idea, and now there are applications. So we can when we know emission rates, for example, welding tumors, so welding process, then we know the components, for example, chromium-6, hexavalent chromium is critical component causing all kind of nasty illnesses. And then when we know that if you use, for example, welding consumable, you know that when I'm welding 100 grams of consumable, this many micrograms will be the hexavalent chromium emission. So now we are talking about emission index. Now, if we add also some sort of estimate of the exposure and dose, we know the dose responses or exposure responses. So then we have a risk. So then we can have a relative risk. So now we can start to describe different kind of processes and sources as their one single indices like emission index or their relative risk factors. So now we can say that, okay, cooking a steak in this condition is this level emission index, and then printing with the laser printer, it's that level. Or in an industrial environment, the welding or pouring a ton of powder, you will release this many grams of powder in the indoor air. So now stack emissions in industrial facilities, those are measured like from the chimney. That's easy, and you measure volume flow, so you know how much you emit, how many grams per minute you emit, or how many grams per production volume or consumable volume you emit. So that's easy. But then what comes to fugitive emissions, so you have the indoor sources and what is leaked out from the factory, not through the chimney, but from the shipping area and so on. So that is something different. So when we know the process emissions, we can also estimate what will be the fugitive emissions to surroundings, not via chimney, but from the indoor, across the building shell. Okay. So what else?
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how much.
I asked for a science and I got a scientific response, which I think is a great basis to start. And now I would like to go, and I will come back to some of your points. I would like to go to Minister Nasser. I know Minister, he came into office in the spring, and ever since then we have encountered joint efforts to try to find a way to finance environmental projects, and we have been discussing, and I can witness his efforts to try to, first of all, understand really how this administration works and really do his best to try to impact it very positively. So I would like to ask the Minister, I think it was 2 weeks ago, you've been called by the non-governmental sector to gather and to kind of say that this is an emergency, air pollution emergency. Once we got these reports of how many people actually die from respiratory diseases. And the numbers kind of scared the public. It was in the 3,500 in 2016 only. So it is a contributing factor, as we discussed. So can you tell us a bit more what was the discussion with these inspection services, with all the stakeholders that you engaged, and how do you see, to what extent these efforts will be effective in addressing this issue?
Thank you, Olympia, dear panelists, dear guests. First of all, thank you for hosting this event. And I think it's great that you're bringing the environmental issues to the forefront here. You have more than one panel discussing these issues. I want to actually just touch base first on what Jonas said, because I think that's very important, on how do we actually tackle, or how do we act upon the air pollution. It is very important that we actually gather the data. There's no question about that. We need to start gathering the data. Currently, we have 13 monitoring stations in our country that work. We got 5 furthermore that we're going to repair in the very near future that will be working by December, hopefully. We will have 2 more in new ones, which we're working together with the Greek government as well, in collaboration with them. I think we need to work on gathering the data. I think Jonas mentioned it and said it very well. If we don't have the data, we won't know where the source is. If we don't know where the source is, we cannot find a solution. So these are longer-term actions we need to work on. Shorter-term action was to call together the group together with the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Agriculture. And we need to mobilize our inspectors to actually be more active, to be on the terrain, to see where the sources are coming from, so we can actually take actions and measures. Thankfully, the Ministry of Interior is supporting us with the police as well. We're patrolling the terrain. We have actually seen positive effects. We know what the main causes of or we believe to know what the main causes of air pollution are. We know that the majority is coming from heating our homes. I think a lot of research is showing that. We're not very energy efficient currently. We know that up to a quarter is the transport, the way we actually, what kind of transport we use. We know that 60% of the cars that are currently on the road here are below Euro 4 standard. We know that about 20%, 18 to 20% is the industry. Now, we need to take also the measures to stop any further pollution. Now, whether that's actually us as citizens, me included as well as a citizen, do we burn our waste? Do we burn our agricultural waste? Do we actually burn our biodegradable garden leaves, etc.? That's why it's also important that our inspectors make thorough checks on our factories in the private sector. And in the long term, we need to actually find solutions for heating our homes. But I think it's very important that we all work together. The Ministry of Environment is actually a policy and lawmaker. We can propose, we can make the laws, we are working on laws, we're actually working on numerous laws, and we're going to upgrade them and hopefully make them public very soon for public debate. But we need to actually work together with all the other institutions. We need to work together with the Ministry of Transport. We need to work together with the Ministry of Education. Make people aware of what causes and what effects this has. We need to work together with the Ministry of Health. It's an intersectorial working group. We can actually propose a lot of things, but we need to get everyone else on board to work together with us.
Thank you. I would like to invite now Nigel to tell us a bit more about the EBRD project, the Green Cities, which is a very concrete attempt to actually provide opportunities for the city of Skopje, the municipalities within the city of Skopje, but I think also to role model further actually inclusion of other municipalities. So Nigel, if you can tell us more about the EBRD engagement and how do you see this project specifically contributing to this cause of combating the air pollution?
Well, thank you, Olympia. Minister, dear panelists, guests, first of all, apologies for being late. I was in Kumanova meeting with the mayor and the councillors there about this very program, EBRD Green Cities. And I want to start off by a little anecdote. Some of you may have heard of a band called the Rolling Stones. Maybe. Yeah, maybe? Okay, so I just happen to think that Mick Jagger is probably one of the world's greatest living philosophers. And in 1964, some of you may remember that, some not, they did a song called Time Is On Our Side. Well, I think they're wrong. This is the one point where I think they're wrong. And there's no one who knows this better, that time is not on our side, than politicians. The clock is ticking, and in Kumanova, the mayor understands his mandate is very limited, and so do the councillors. And they are doing everything they can to address environmental issues in their city. And so let me kind of step back and talk about EBRD Green Cities and then how that relates to Mick Jagger and Kumanova. So EBRD Green Cities is a €1.5 billion investment framework for helping cities in the EBRD countries of operation to invest in environmental infrastructure. But this is not like a normal, we're not like a normal bank, because as a development bank we have the opportunity to influence not just the investment thinking of cities, but also their strategic planning and their capacity building. So the EBRD Green Cities has these three main components: the investments supported by a Green City Action Plan, and Skopje is one of our leading cities in this effect. Skopje's Green City Action Plan is now coming to completion, and that action plan identifies priority investments to address environmental issues. And guess which environmental issue comes out number one? Air quality. So, Green City Action Plan tied to investments. So we already have what we call a trigger investment in Skopje, the replacement of buses, so the old diesel buses with CNG buses. We have a number of other projects in development as well, energy efficiency in buildings, all of these aimed at reducing environmental load and emissions, addressing the air quality problem. We have 35 cities currently part of the program, around 22 countries. Skopje is the only city in North Macedonia. We want other cities to join, because one of the things that we've been able to do is this program has attracted attention from multilateral donors, in particular the Green Climate Fund, for which Olympia is very involved. This is the largest fund for climate action in the world, and we were successful in securing the first tranche of 230 million euros of concessional co-finance and grant money to support investments in 9 countries. 9 countries out of those 22 have signed up to the specific Green Climate Fund. One of those countries is North Macedonia. And so this money is now available to support Skopje, Kumanova, other cities in their attempts and in their efforts to address environmental issues. So we have city action supported by the financial community, supported by the multilateral donor community. All of that together, I think, is what is needed in order to address the environmental challenges that are facing cities in North Macedonia, because time is not on our side, and Mick Jagger, unfortunately, is wrong on that count. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Now I would like to turn to Jasminka. She's coming from the RES Foundation in Serbia, and she's also a coordinator of the Network of Good Energy that works with local governments and civil society in Serbia as a leading platform for energy transition. So when we talk about energy transition, it seems the most difficult part to basically something as the main contributor, the energy generation as a main contributor to air pollution, but also how easy will this transition be, this energy transition? What is your perspective on working with the local governments, with the government in Serbia, with CSOs? What is your opinion? Because yesterday we presented some data that the private sector, there are some surveys, when they think about climate change and climate risks, 70% of them say that there should be some kind of a disruptive policy decision that can actually help us reduce the emissions. And do you think that this is really the case? To what extent the private sector is also a driver of this change of energy transition?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Olympia, dear panelists and guests. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about this very, very hot topic. I would like to approach your question from the air policy angle, because there are so many angles we could approach energy transition. But since this is the topic of the panel, I will focus on this particular aspect. As previous panelists already highlighted, this is a very complex area, and the problem is becoming bigger and more visible. It's not only local, it's national, it's regional, it's also the EU, neighboring EU member state. Bulgaria has similar problems with air pollution. So I would say it's going to be very hard to identify quick wins or easy and fast solutions to the problem in a cost-effective way. But we have to look what do we have in common in all these countries that are on the high level of air pollution in a heating season. I would say that inventories are not perfect, that's true, but at least speaking from the experience in Serbia, it's good enough to start looking to the solutions that would bring about desired change in the fastest way. Our inventory looks like this. 79% of PM 2.5 comes from individual heating devices, whether households or those lower than 50 megawatts. The rest comes from industry, big energy, 6-7% traffic, and due to climate change and the fact that in our climate zone we will be facing more and more temperature inversions, which means that the air will get stuck in that low level and everything that you emit in this air, we will have very extended periods of very, very high pollution. And this is not only in one spot, maybe if you're in a valley like Skopje, but actually all over Serbia, we had at the beginning of October, due to this condition, high levels, extremely high levels of air pollution measuring by particulate matter. So in that respect, we think that the whole region should be looking firstly into the solutions that are related to individual heating. Minister rightly pointed out to the law enforcement issues. We also have a problem with burning fields. We also have a problem with burning waste, all sorts of waste. We also have a problem with actually people that are, because of they're in the state of energy poverty, burning even wood may be even good, but in a completely outdated devices. So I would say the common ground for all these things would be law enforcement for what we already have, and also introduction of standards. We do need some standards. It cannot be voluntary either to poison people or yourself or not. This has to be banned. We are very much looking into, as an inspiration, into Eco-Design Directive that is being promoted at the EU level. We know it's expensive, we know it takes a lot of time, we know, but it can also be very inspirational for a private sector, because if there's going to be some kind of change out schemes, our local producer could see their role in it. Therefore, I would just focus my statement in this direction. If we want to solve this 79% of PM 2.5, and I believe that situation is similar across the region, we need to tackle this issue first, and of course along this we have to work on traffic and emissions from industry and all that. That would be for now.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would like to turn again to Jonas. What are some of the solutions, given that you work on the sources, and that is an ongoing process, right? But what would you say it's really something, a quick win, as we say, in this fight?
Well, I was surprised that the heating is one big problem here as well. I mean, well, you have 4 seasons, and that's in a way understandable. One way is to, of course, kill the sources. Most efficient way to do this in energy and heating is to build up a nuclear power plants. And the best locations would be close to the big cities, where you can use the excess heat in a central heating system. And if you can provide that for free, I'm sure that coal use and fossil fuel use would be reduced significantly. So this is definitely one way to go. And this is also well justified, because if you look through the history, deaths caused by different energy production forms, so nuclear power is something like 0.07 deaths per produced terawatt hour. And then if you look, for example, gas, it's already 2.8 or closer to 3, and brown coal is somewhere in 30. So it's 30 times less killing than use of natural gas. Okay, then what comes to the city design, cities belongs to people. So try to reduce traffic as efficiently, and this is possible by increasing light traffic infrastructure, pedestrian streets, bikeways, and so on. I think it would be a really nice way to release the city space from cars to the people. And one critical is, of course, public transportation. And yeah, I would even say that put the public transportation free, as they have done in, for example, in Estonia. So then the rich people still can have the empty roads, and the family people can take their kids and so on freely to their hobbies and so on. Maybe something like this could be quite good.
So I would like to go to Yasminka right away. So what about this region? I mean, we have a lot of poverty still, and we know that this burning the solid waste, it is also connected to the social stratum that we have as countries in this region. What are the effective measures having in mind this aspect? Can you tell us some concrete examples?
Well, we have been actually thinking a lot about this, but every time when we start talking, and 2 days ago my colleague who's here with me was actually chairing the discussion with MPs in Serbia and with the minister exactly about this issue, we find ourselves in a vicious circle. And in the end, there is no one policy instrument or one policy or legal intervention to do this. It's a huge problem, it's regional, it's affecting every single individual. There is no escape, because I don't want to sound very dramatic, but I'm talking, for example, about climate change, when it's temperature inversion, when it happens, and it will be happening more and more for longer periods of time. You cannot escape. You have to go to Croatia or fly to Slovenia. You have to really go far away from this region. We think actually that we cannot sort this out by some kind of unconnected laws or regulations or instruments. We need a comprehensive policy response, and we need to design it. It shouldn't take a long time, but shouldn't even be quick. I understand that transport is a big issue, but it's 6% in our inventory. It will not solve our problem. And it will not solve regional problem. It's a good way to go. Maybe it's a good pilot to say, we can do this, we can solve something, we can solve this 6%. It could be motivator. I'm not against it. But if we really want our goal to be in a decade to breathe cleaner air, we will need to do much more than this. And where does it start? We believe it starts, it could even start at regional level. This policy actually is an excellent example or opportunity for regional cooperation that could be in the end successful. We all are affected by the same problem. The causes are similar. Solutions might be also similar because of the social perspective. Who knows? I'm not, I would say, expert for finding financial instruments, but of course, socially vulnerable have to be treated differently than those that can pay for change out. We would also need to learn from different countries. For example, USA, they were doing change out scheme already. They've been doing for decades. UK in 50s, they've had a major problem with, we are there. With all due respect, we are not where Finland is. We cannot look there because they're talking about nuances. Lucky for them, I'd like to live there, but we have to go 30, 40 years backwards to find or to get inspired. Of course, we could also rely on newer technologies, but they come at a certain cost. They might be expensive for individuals. But first thing we could, we could do, public sector could lead as an example. And this fuel switch in public sector should be definitely, could be faster. And then immediately, maybe in these smaller areas, urban areas or pockets, people would see, maybe they would feel some relief. And then snowball effect, etc., etc. But we do need to create a policy. Our countries don't have a great, I would say, history or record in creating and delivering on a comprehensive policies. That could be a problem, but we have support, we have the EU, we have a lot of financing mechanisms. This is a good opportunity, and we should definitely first tackle law enforcement, not to do what you're not allowed to do by law, inspections and all that. We have the same problem. And then second thing is to find solutions for the poor and to tackle the biggest portion of this PM 2.5 inventory, which is individual heating.
Thank you. I will, usually in public administration, we say if you don't want to solve a problem, form another working group or create another action plan. How true is this, Mr. Nasser? How do you generate efficient action plans? How do you engage the public and especially the private sector, given that lately in the country we have innovators, we have young people trying to actually come up with good ideas for air solution, for environmental issues, how do we engage these people and really show them that there is will and there is the platform for their ideas to actually be enforced and maybe in some years even become a role model in how we tackle such complex issues? Do you see this happening?
Yes, I believe we are doing, or we're trying. There's no question about that. I think this event alone shows that the awareness is there. I think pretty much nearly every single one of my colleagues is already being asked and is active. We're trying to actually speak up about it. I think the President was speaking about it a couple of days ago. The will is there. Our will is there. There's no question about that. We are trying to implement the changes. Again, I'm going to probably repeat what Jasminka said, and it's very true. We, as the executive, we as the government, we need to make courageous decisions, bold ones. In the short run, they might not be popular, but in the long run, these will benefit everyone. The private sector needs to understand their responsibilities. They need to take responsibilities for their actions, how they produce, what kind of packaging material they produce as well. The NGOs, I'm very happy to work together with them. We need them to support us. They are an extended arm of our institution. And should we, hopefully we will very soon get the date for the EU accession talks. Chapter 27 is quite a big chapter, and we'll definitely need the NGOs to support us on that. Then we as individuals, as citizens, need to realize as well what consequences our actions have. What consequences do my actions have as an individual? What I consume, how I consume it, what do I do with it afterwards? At the same time, that we as a government, as a country, we need to give the options, make the options available. I'll touch this base slightly on the waste management. It is a very important topic. I think it's very interlinked with air pollution. Do we have sufficient containers on our roads in all the cities, in the rural areas? Unfortunately, the answer is no. We need to look at that. We are looking at that. We are changing the law on waste management. We're looking at the different streams as well. We're actually going to speak to the private sector to see so they actually take responsibility as well. We need to look at extended producer responsibilities, the EPR system. We need to make sure that it works. If it works in other countries, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here, by the way. We're looking at best practices in other countries, and it works. We can try and tailor-make them to work here. Sorry, there's so many things I actually wanted to say about it, and of course, I'm actually really happy that the youth is aware. And that's why I want to work together with the Ministry of Education, and I want the environmental sciences to be more visible in the classes in schools. I think it's important. I've heard a few parents telling me, some of the kids coming home and telling them they need to separate their waste. And I think if the kids tell us that, it gives us a certain responsibility as a parent. Because at the end of the day, they will inherit this tomorrow. This is one of the things they will inherit. And how we treat it today is the way they're going to get it tomorrow. We as parents, as grandparents, are responsible to take care of the environment.
Thank you. And Nigel, I wanted to ask you, you work on projects on the area of the city of Skopje, but what would you say or recommend is a good approach to get other mayors on board, to work together and to actually help the city of Skopje as well to tackle this issue? What are some of the challenges that you see, but also some really maybe opportunities that you see that they should explore more?
Thanks, Olympia. So, to answer this, I'd like to draw on another metaphor. I'm from New Zealand. Some of you may have heard of the All Blacks. This is the rugby team that does the haka. Maybe you've heard of them. And they're quite a successful sporting franchise, and one of the reasons that they're successful is because that they understand that they need to work together as a team. That the fast runner needs to work with the big guy who's in the scrum. And that metaphor can work for solving these problems that we're dealing with now. I couldn't agree more with the other panelists that we have to combine all of the tools that we have available at our disposal. So that's why myself, as a banker, is trying to work with the policy people to make sure that the policies that are transforming the market are delivering in a way that we can finance. It's no point just policymakers going out there and writing their eco-design rules without consulting with the financial community about how that could be put into place. There's no point them putting in place monitoring and enforcement things without involving the other stakeholders, whether it's the financiers or the private sector. So in terms of Skopje, that's one of the reasons that we're doing this Green City Action Plan together with the city officials and with the stakeholders. We've had several hundred people involved as civil society involved in the development of this action plan, and that's helping to inform us and the other donors in the community, in the wider community, about what the priorities are. And to attract other mayors to the program, we need to be able to demonstrate that this is delivering in Skopje, that this is a model that works, that we can't just, it's not just the financiers coming in and financing individual projects, but working together with civil society, with government on policies, with the city and the banking community together. I know it sounds all very kind of lovey-dovey and we should all hold hands, but in reality, that's the only way we're going to solve this very complex problem. Does that answer your question? I don't know. But.
Yes. So what, because there is the action plan already there, and there is air pollution and transport, what would you say is, if we need to prioritize for the city, what would you say that we should pay attention mostly to?
In terms of the environmental challenges?
Yes.
Right. Well, this is the important response. It's not my decision to say what those priorities are. This is for the community, and that's why the City Action Plan is so important. Because for me, I can come in as a banker and say, well, do you know what? The best financial return is for you to finance energy efficiency in public buildings, because that gives me a lot of the moolah, right? But that's not for me. That's not for me to put that in place. That's for the community. And this is what's happening at the moment in Skopje, and that's what we want to happen in Kumanovo, and that's happening in other cities, Novi Sad, Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, in Amman in Jordan. I know that's dodging the issue about what the most important issue is, but I honestly believe that we as financiers need to work with the stakeholders on the ground. Now, obviously, I've been in Skopje for a while. I have a little cough. That's because I have asthma, and coming to cities with bad air quality is not very comfortable for me. So I would really like to be able to work with you on solving the air quality problem from a personal point of view. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So, Jonas, you come from a country which is in the top 10 for clean air, and you speak to countries that want and tend to be there. What are some examples or something that impresses you the most, some policy measure that happened in your country which was really effective and changed the behavior of the citizens? What is that? Maybe you forgot because it probably has been a long time ago, but
Yeah, well,
because
yeah,
these
five
countries
years ago,
top
I moved
the
to
cleanest
Denmark.
countries.
Yes. I mean, I can really proudly say that, as Jaminka also said, that we are breathing in Finland most clean air in Europe, at least top 5, I would say, not top 10.
Okay. Sorry.
And the exposure levels are somewhere around 5 micrograms per cubic meter. Of course, we are living mainly in cities where levels are a bit higher. It is estimated that we have only 2,000 premature deaths annually. You had 3,500. And every year we lose approximately 33,000 life years. We are 5 million people, so much more than in Macedonia. So I don't know if the numbers are saying that we are doing neither so good. I mean, it's still quite a lot of people who are suffering. And one thing is that the exposure response, according to these global burden of disease studies, the safe limit of air pollution PM2.5 is somewhere 2 to 3 micrograms per cubic meter. And now we are somewhere between 5 to 10 in Finland, and the problem is that the response is increasing very fast at lower concentrations. So we still should push down quite much in order to make our air like the currently it's the highest environmental risk factor for Finnish health, and we still should clean it in order to push it even like away from top risk factors. And well, we use nuclear power. That's one thing what is saving. We have also old cars. We are not populated so densely. We are usually having quite good inversion during winter time, helping dilution of pollutions. Unfortunately, we are combusting lots of wood in our saunas and so on. So that's something what we could change. This is a really sensitive topic for Finns, and we like our fireplaces, we like our wooden saunas, and yeah, we have to maybe be a bit flexible in that part. But yeah, I'm not fully sure what are the most efficient. Maybe the nuclear power was like the...
Okay. And Minister Nasser, so what are the main challenges to get the central government on board? Do you think that the level of awareness is there? And when you have the discussions on how to prioritize, what is your feeling? Is the awareness there and the willingness? What are the challenges to get on board and be even more effective?
I think, as I said earlier, the awareness is definitely there. There's no question about that. We all know, the citizens know, it's the desire that we do something about it. There's no question about that, and we are actively working on it. Just to touch base, though, on the energy sources that was being mentioned, that's above my pay grade, whether it's nuclear or not. However, though, we do definitely need to diversify our energy sources. There's no question about that. We know we are net importers as well, so we definitely need to diversify. Renewable energies is something we can definitely work on. Our country is blessed with a lot of sun, something we should definitely be trying to use a lot more of. Again, though, I will jump to Nigel's comments here. It's a financing question. All these actions, these measures cost a lot of money. We need to not only have an action plan, as Nigel said, we actually need to have concrete ones. We need to prioritize. The banks, I'm sure, will actually finance any good project. However, though, we need to prioritize our projects, what we think are the most important ones, which ones we think will actually make a change and develop our country in the right direction. We have started this year with a few solar farms or photovoltaic farms. We are hoping to further extend that in the future. We need to work together with the international community, with international financial institutions. We need to work together with international donors as well. As I think we're all aware that our own financial means are limited to a certain extent. However, we definitely need to direct them in the right direction. There's no question about that. I see the clock ticking the whole time, just getting reminded of my favorite song mentioned by Nigel. Time is on our side. Unfortunately, he's right, though. Time is not really on our side. We need to act. There's no question.
And Nigel, given that the initial investment in projects like energy efficiency are not always the ones that bring the returns right away, do you think that we can talk about turning these investments and seeing them in light of actually investments that will bring bigger returns, and how to work with the private sector to engage them to also invest even though the returns are not there right away?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, whenever we're talking to clients, we never mention energy efficiency, we never mention climate change. when we're trying to pitch an energy efficiency investment, we talk about productivity and the savings that they will make. When I go to my credit committee with an energy efficiency investment, our credit committee basically is looking at the ability of the client to repay. They don't care whether it's energy efficiency or climate change or whether it's going to save babies from dying. These guys are hard credit analysts. All they are interested in repayments, and when I can tell them that the energy efficiency will reduce their energy bill and therefore increase their profitability, that increases their ability to pay the bill. Therefore, the credit committee is happy. So I guess for those of us who are working in this space, or I guess people in this room, we're all convinced that this is good. But when we're talking to people who are maybe a little more hard-headed commercially, there's no need to mention saving the planet and energy efficiency. It's about talking their language of productivity and saving money, essentially. And that's how we engage with the private sector. We have a credit line in the Western Balkans of 117 million focused directly on energy efficiency and SMEs in the private sector. And it's very successful. But it's because we don't call it an energy efficiency credit line.
How do you call it?
It's because we call it the sustainable energy blah blah credit line. Okay? It's called WebCEF, and it's very active here. We lend to small banks who then lend to their customers on small scale, whether it's a couple of 100,000 to replace a heavy fuel boiler with a highly efficient biomass or with natural gas. The local banks, they're not talking about climate change, they're talking about productivity improvements, improvements in the quality of the environment for their workers, those sorts of things. So I think those are very important elements for us to learn as, what could you say, as advocates of this agenda.
Okay. I wanted to ask Jasminka, because you have experience working with the non-governmental sector, how do you see the role of the non-governmental sector? Because sometimes it seems that it's too critical towards governments, but as we all speak, and I think that we all agree this is such a complex issue, what is a productive way of them engaging with government? Not because governments sometimes push back because they think it's just criticism. How can they have a more constructive role, having in mind the complexity and the policies that needs to be there in order to have an effect on this issue?
Thank you. It's a really good question. I've been thinking about this. I would say that situation depends what level of government. If it's central government, if it's center of power, like Ministry of Energy, for example, it's harder. It's harder to tap in with some recommendations, and then you have to build really kind of a constructive dialogue. And I think this is what many NGOs in Serbia, at least, are trying to do also through the EU integration process, like a backdoor, to propose some kind of, to be, of course, critically oriented, but also to point to certain ways of dealing with things like constructive dialogue and all these that we all know about. But I think the real impact actually is already happening. It's not huge, but we can see that the start of this process at the local level, where NGOs all across Serbia, in their limited number and with limited resources, are really getting into a more constructive solution-based dialogues with citizens, and they actually bridge this gap between citizens and local level. That's my impression. I really haven't done study, but I think this is what's happening. And this is also I would say this is also respected from the central level, because our organization was many times in a position to be asked from a central level, oh, guys, you travel all over Serbia, you know what's happening, we don't have resources, we don't go down there, we don't have people to send to the field, what's happening in the field? Sometimes, through this network of positive energy, we even sometimes coordinate between local level and central level. So I think we should really stay away from criticism, but try to be this also one of the missing ingredients, more cooperative and kind of filling in the gaps of coordination, of solutions, or mobilization at the lower level. And I would also say that one of the maybe greatest opportunities, also Minister mentioned, is this untapped solar PV potential. And I would say through this little case study that citizens are starting, and also private sector, we talked to some of them, to see the huge gap between the locally available source of renewable energy and its deployment. It's striking. Our feed-in tariff was for 10 megawatt, first 5 plus 5, and it was filled right away. And that's not even the problem. We're phasing out feed-in tariffs. But then the problem are the administrative or technical or grid, whatever you call them, barriers that are still there. And basically in Serbia, as an individual, you can only in theory become prosumer because it's so costly that basically it's senseless. And we do see the big potential there also with working, connecting citizens, creating, let's say, mini local energy models, and that would find their place in a national level as well at some point.
Thank you. Before we move on to the questions, I have one last question for Minister. So, incentives or sanctions? What would work better to address air pollution?
A good mix of both? No, listen, we definitely need to incentivize. We need to actually give incentives, there's no question about it. But at the same time, when it comes to sanctions, if we're doing something that is not legally allowed, then we should sanction it. There are laws in place, there's certain reasons why the laws are in place, because they should not be done. And if these laws are being broken, then we need to sanction them. However, at the same time, though, we also need to support the citizens. As has been mentioned numerous times here as well before, financially we're not that well off. That's why we have these old cars here. These are the cars that the EU didn't want. They landed in our country, and we allowed it for them to land here. So now we need to incentivize our citizens somehow how to get rid of the old cars and move on to more efficient ones. Hopefully, hybrids, electric cars, something in that direction.
Thank you. So the time is up for this part, but we actually now have the Q&A.
Yeah, so we have 20 minutes for Q&A. We want to know this is an incredibly important topic. So please, as you're thinking of your question, have a specific one and ask one of the panelists your exact question. So we'll start back here in the middle, the first hand up. Yep. Okay. There's a microphone right there.
Okay. So I'll be really brief. So I'm an American, but I live here and have the privilege of living here. So hope this is encouraging. Actually, the government has really done a lot on this. And we're through the Innovation Fund and in partnership with the university, we're developing a law enforcement tool. And we'd love to meet with you guys to get this into your hands and into the hands of all of your inspectors. Okay? And so, Minister, we really appreciated what you were sharing, that it's actually that the measurement is the issue. But it's college kids that have it was university students at Kirill Methody in response to the inspectorate and Karposh and other places that have partnered with us as a private company to develop this. So we're really grateful. Thanks.
Thank you. You can speak with him at lunch. Again, let's make sure we have questions and not talk about products. Right here.
Hello, and thanks from my side too for the interesting panel. My name is Dragan Česazdov. We work on air purification for the last few years. Two questions. The first one is, how come the data that is collected is still on the basis of showing us average of past times pollution? I think regarding to projects like this, it's, I mean, what's the reason that we still only see that it was polluted and not it is or it is not polluted right now? That is my first question. Regarding the data that we see on our applications, it's always, like I said, an average of what it is, and actually that average only tells us, was it polluted or was it not polluted? But it doesn't really help in the solving problem. That's the first question. When will that maybe change in the global scale? And the second one is, why is air purification so neglected in all these panels since, I mean, I've read a lot since we're working with this, And everybody that I've read, and a lot of people say that if we all change tomorrow, it's going to take about 15 years till we really see any kind of impact of lowering or better air quality. So how come air purification, which is no rocket science, it's a fan, it's a filter, it's so neglected in times where it really is something that we really can do, and it is somehow put aside? That would be my two questions.
Yeah, maybe I can give you quickly the technical part. So just if we think cleaning up urban air, well, you need energy to circulate air through filter. You cannot interfere on the inversion to get rid of it and move it to other countries.
I was talking on indoor.
Indoor.
Outdoor is the big scale where we really have to figure out not to have it, but now I guess it's for the indoor.
Indoor air quality can be controlled quite well with portable air cleaners, but still you always need the replacement air. And the best would be, of course, to have the clean replacement air. Whenever you clean something, you use energy, and that is not the optimal choice. But I can understand your worry that, yes, if you are, for example, sensitized to asthma or something like that, then you may really need those. Or if you have the pollution event, you can use it occasionally. But I'm more like removing the emissions. This is like the most efficient way. Yeah.
So regarding to the data, I believe we have managed to get it live now. Regarding the data, we have actually got it, well, with a delay, of course, a slight delay, but it is rather actual and live.
Well, every time when I look at my data, it says it is measured at, for example, if we have now 12:30, then the official government measuring stations saying that it was this data from, for example, 11 o'clock. So we always have a 1.5 hour of delay of information, which is, I guess, normal, but it doesn't help us in really seeing where city planning went wrong, where really emissions comes from, because air moves very fast and it's a dynamic subject. And if we only have old data, then I don't think we can react to solving the problem.
I fully agree with you. Thank you for that. I agree with you. It's very important that we have the data. We will look into the IT side of it. I cannot give you an absolute answer why we don't have live up-to-date right now. I think some of the applications, though, do have very live data from our monitoring stations, by the way. I will ask my IT department to see why we have an hour delay. If there is an hour, I believe there might be an hour delay or half an hour. I will look into it, but I believe some of the applications that are being used by our citizens have a very up-to-date live data, which they are being fed by these government's monitoring stations.
I would like
Perfect.
to test
Next
that.
question. Next question up front, right here. Okay, right there. Sorry.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Trajko Slaveski. I'm academic professor, but I have experience in government. I was Minister of Development late 1999, 2000, and 3 years I spent in government as a Minister of Finance. Congratulations to organizers for this topic, which is quite topical at the very right moment in Macedonia. And having my previous experience in government and knowing firsthand the workings, internal workings of the government and procedures, I have a personal message, if you allow me to, Mr. Nureddini.
It's a question, no personal
Yes,
messages.
no,
Please, a question.
Okay, so first of all, we all much appreciate your service, Mr. Nureddini, and the service of your father. So please convey our best messages, best regards to your father, who has done a lot in introducing our diplomats in Vienna to elites in Vienna, both business, economic, etc. So the message is that you should be the second most important minister in the government of Macedonia, next to the finance minister. This is the reason why. Environment, air pollution in Macedonia is on the top of the list of worries of Macedonian citizens, according to the latest poll, next to jobs, standards of living, and immigration. And please, allow me, this is the message. Please raise your voice. You don't have anything to lose. You have much to gain to the end of your mandate. Slam your hand on the table and ask the government to do more on protecting Macedonian citizens from terrible pollution that we are living in. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a question in the middle, and then we'll go to this next one up here.
Hello. First to greet you, my name is Nikola. I'm an innovator. We also support with several projects from the Macedonian Innovation Fund. So we are also in the end phases, and some of the products are already on market. I would like to ask Nigel, which are, what is the procedure and which are the steps that the financing goes through? So if we apply, for example, from, there is an initiative to apply from Bitola as a city, and how we can transfer maybe all of our innovations which have huge impact on many of the sources, for example, at the exact point of the sources, so we're not cleaning up afterwards, we're eliminating the source. How can we scale that up towards the full network that you are supporting towards the cities?
Thank you. And I have to say that everywhere I turn, since I've been here in Skopje, there are people with startups and innovators. It's so refreshing to see all of this activity going on, whether it's the design of an air monitoring system or other innovations such as you raised, Nicola. So the first thing that you need to know is that banks find it difficult to finance startups. You know that there's this thing called the valley of death between having a great idea and then making it bankable. We have within the bank an advisory for small businesses which tries to bridge between this innovation startup and getting it to scale. So advisory for small business. We provide grant funding to cover everything from corporate governance, building your financial systems, through to marketing and so on. So I would encourage you to come and see me afterwards, and I can give you the contact. If you are beyond that point and you consider that you have a bankable business, then you need to approach EBRD with a business plan. That business plan needs to include things like, you know, your expectations on revenue, your balance sheet, how are you going to repay the loan. We have bankers here in Skopje who would be very happy to meet with you, and I'm sure there are other institutions, the World Bank is here, other IFIs. I guess the one difference with the EBRD is that we tend to accommodate smaller loans. World Bank and so on, I mean, I can't say specifically the scale of loans, but smaller, 2 to 5 million, we can do that because we tend to focus on private sector investments. That's kind of the nature of EBRD. I hope that helped answer your question.
Question up here in the front.
Thank you. My name is Gregory. I come from Struga. I would have to say that we have a more emerging environment issue, and that is the waste management. Since I think it's nationwide, and it's 365 days per year. I got involved in this issue unwillingly, let's say. In 2014, we had our landfill in Struga, which is 200 meters, 500 meters from the first houses in the town, 1 kilometer from the center of the city, and 1.5 kilometers from the Ohrid Lake. The landfill was accidentally catching fire, and the whole town couldn't breathe for 20, 30 days. And I was amazed to see that we don't have any standard landfills that is fulfilling the minimum legal requirements to be a landfill. My question is to the minister, What are your steps in this? Where are we with the regional modern tech landfills, recycling the waste? And
yeah, as I mentioned earlier, waste management goes very well hand in hand with the air pollution. And I think we cannot look at it as a seasonal topic. Just like we can't stop thinking about air pollution in March and April when the weather gets better, or when we don't need any more heating. We still need to continue implementing the plans and the actions. In regards to the waste management, I will be, well, this is a very status quo answer. We have one in Skopje which meets international standards officially. We are working the other ones. We are signing off today, to be honest with you. This is a great step forward for us as a government and also as a country. We're signing off today the contracts for the Northeast East region to start with the EPA funded project. Why do I mention that? Not because I want to announce this signature of today. These are 80 municipalities. This project covers 80 municipalities. For some reason, with maybe all right reasons in some cases, none of the municipalities want to have the landfill next or in their municipality. None of the municipalities want to have the transfer stations there. We cannot make the waste disappear. We need to actually work together with all municipalities. As you are aware, and you're in that region exactly as well, we've had an instance where the municipality disagrees again. It is a complex, delicate issue to deal with so many municipalities and mayors. We are working, we're doing our best to try and convince. We have studies which say where it should be. Those municipalities disagree, of course. We need to convince the citizens as well. These will be up to high standards, landfills, transfer stations. These will be generating jobs. This will be generating selection centers. This will be, recycling will be introduced there as well. We need the people to understand that as well, and the municipalities.
There is a legal solution to this problem. We don't have to convince the municipalities. We just amend the law and take the decision making to the government, to the central government. Based on this
We are democratic. We'd like to work together with all the municipalities. We're not going to be authoritarian about this.
Absolutely. Next question right here in the middle.
Jonathan Banks from the United States. Quick question for the minister. Back to the monitoring of air quality. Does the ministry have plans to move from current air quality to air quality forecasts? Because that is, that's more of a helpful element to help people plan what they're going to do for the day or not do for the day. It's something that the United States has been doing for a while now, where they actually provide an idea. In the weather report in the morning, they say, today's going to be a code red day, stay indoors, whatever. Is there a plan to move towards that level of air quality monitoring?
Yes, we're actually working on a plan to try and predict. Let's also be very honest, we have a certain amount of monitoring stations. If you have ideas or you can support us in developing that, I would greatly appreciate your support on that. We definitely want to. We're working on introducing that, but we're going to need a bit more time, unfortunately, before we achieve that kind of standard where we can say what's going to be happening today. We hope, of course, that we don't need to ever say it's a code red day, but if you have any ideas, my door is open. I'm very happy and willing to listen.
We have one last question in the middle, and then we'll let everybody do 30-second wrap up. Last question.
Hello. My name is Goco Stanovski. I'm a representative of a forwarding agency called Vidrashpet. I'm not here to sell any product.
Thank you.
I used to live in Canada and Germany. I moved back in the era of clean diesel, 2016, in the era of the emergency in Stajkovci, 2016, so it doesn't matter. You mentioned, my question is to the minister in Uredini. You mentioned some incentives for the population to import newer cars than the current ones. So the current norm is Euro 4. What are your plans for the future? Is the norm included Euro 5, the popular clean diesel, or are you going for Euro 6 or above?
I didn't actually say we're incentivized to import cars, but if it's going to have to be imported, all cars are imported here. Of course, none are produced here. Maybe they be new ones or not, depending on that. This is something we're working together with the Ministry of Economy. It's not a decision we can make as a Ministry of Environment. We can actually propose, and we are proposing, to have newer standards. We need to, if we can actually get Euro 5, I'll be very grateful. But we need to first look at all the cars that are on the road, which are below Euro 4. And see how we can incentivize our citizens to buy new standard cars. Again, I'm not saying let's import them. If they're going to be imported, then we're going to have to actually try and put a limit on it and actually try and say this is the minimum. But then again, I'm not the authority that can decide that. I'm working together with the Ministry of Economy. Hopefully we can come to a reasonable, agreeable solution.
If each one of you wants to do 30 seconds on a message you'd have for each of us as individuals, that'd be a great way to wrap the session up. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'll just continue as I was. Please, you left my colleagues, Adi, on the panel. I think they feel a bit jealous that I'm going to ask many questions very shortly. No, again, my door is open. Ideas, the academia, the NGOs. We're here to work together. We don't have all the solutions. If we can actually get support from the private sector, from the NGOs, from the citizens, my door is open. I'm willing to listen. Not selling products, of course, but ideas and solutions. Again, criticize, but please let it be constructive. Constructive criticism will help us move forward. We know, the majority of us know and are aware of the issues we face, but please give us a constructive feedback. We're happy to listen together. Sorry, let me put it this way. Individually, we're all polluters. Together, though, we might actually find a solution as a society. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's good to remember that our pollution is your pollution. Air pollution doesn't respect border controls. It's beneficial for developed, rich countries to support poor countries, and especially rich countries buying lots of products shouldn't externalize their emissions to poorer countries. Maybe this is good to keep in mind.
Thank you. I would like to finish in a positive manner, and I would just say let's be more ambitious. And let's not be afraid, all of us in the region, all the countries, to say we deserve and we want to breathe a clean air.
And in the final 35 seconds, I'd like to make 2 points. First of all, I honestly believe that the financial community needs to be part of the solution. Banks, I think, are slowly starting to come to the realization that they need to be at the table and financing more of the environmental solutions. And just to quote a proverb in my own home country language, he aha ngā mea nui, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the solution? It is people, it is people, it is people. Thank you.
Thanks for the panelists. Thanks for the audience. I would also get my 10 seconds, if I may. So I just want to fully agree, first of all, with Mr. Slavevsky. I really think that this issue should be, I can fully agree that the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Environment are really key for solving this issue, and I really want to encourage everybody to think about this issue as economic issue as well, as something creating economic opportunities and progress, and to really think of decentralizing. I always say this, but we see the trends, we're moving towards cities, but let's think how to develop this country a bit more equally, because I think that that will be also part of the answer to air pollution if we start really develop the rest of the cities, the rest of the areas. So that would be the message that I would like to send today. Thank you.